978-454-4980. Paul Morano, my co-host today, with nothing really important to say, except the oven and for 12 years. In the studio, though, we have a guy who's running against my Diana. And I don't know how this happened. But she's doing such a great job. How could anybody run against Diana DeCologero? But I was chatting with Phil earlier in the week, and he actually had a couple of things that I don't think I could have argued with, which was scary even for me. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let him introduce himself to my listeners, because you've never, I don't think, heard him on this program. Well, that's not true. You called in during the meals tax.
I absolutely did.
You got to talk right into the mic.
I did call in during the meals tax.
They're not very sensitive.
Thank you, Tom.
So just tell us who you are and why you're running, and then we'll get into like all the questions, and then Paul will ask you about abortion.
Okay. My name's Phil DeCologero. I am a candidate for the Democratic nomination for state representative in the 14th Essex District. That includes the communities of pieces of the communities of North Andover, Methuen, Haverhill, and Lawrence. And I'm thrilled to be here, actually. So I've called into the show before, Tom, but I've never had the opportunity.
Was it just a meals tax, or did you call for something else? I think. Might have been a town meeting thing.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I know that I called in at some point during the second meals tax debate in North Andover, and we talked about that a little bit. I don't know that I've ever called in otherwise.
I'm still stuck on you being thrilled to be here.
You know what?
How did that
because
happen?
Tom called me and asked me to be on here, and I thought, you know what? That's a great opportunity, considering every other time I've run into Tom, he's like, "Don't talk to me. You're running against my girl. You're running against Diane." And I'm like, "Well, Tom, that's great." And then this weekend? It was last weekend at Cheap Sharing. I'm standing at the North Andover Merchants Association booth. We're handing out promotional materials for local businesses in town. And I'm standing next to a gentleman who is not a Democrat, but he's running, I guess, for Governor, Larry Madolo. And Tom doesn't even look at me. He looks right at Larry and he goes, "Yep, you're standing with him. I'm not going to talk to you."
I'm not voting for you. I'm not talking to you.
So he's standing next to
this
guy.
guy.
He's forced to talk to you.
So then I'm like, "Oh, well, no, Tom is absolutely," but he's putting himself in this situation. So I don't know what happened. I don't know what changed. I don't know. So I appreciate that, Tom's letting me have the opportunity to be here today to talk about my candidacy for state representative for this genuinely Merrimack Valley seat. So thank you.
You just have to understand my personality. Like, that's me showing that I like you. When I'm picking on you like that, Paul will tell you. He's been dealing with it for 12 years. When I like you, that's when I'm needling you. If I don't like you, I just walk away. I don't even say hi to you.
You're just going to try to ignore it.
Oh, well, I guess you love Willie Antigua, so that's good.
Well, actually, Willie and I get along really well when it doesn't come to politics. When it comes to politics, we don't get along well, but outside of politics, we get along great.
Well, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with your needling of me, Tom. I just didn't know, again, where you really felt, because you were like, I don't really. You really weren't even talking to me, so I'm like, oh, well, this is a change. So
I was so angry at the festival committee in North Andover for not allowing candidates to disseminate literature on the Common, a open public space for an open public event, that it wasn't really about you. I was kind of huffing all day about it because I'm a First Amendment guy, and so when I go to my hometown sheep shearing festival, I want candidates to come over and give me their literature so I can figure out who I want to vote for, especially since I'm pulling a Democrat ballot this year. And when I got there, the very first candidate I ran into said, "Yeah, they told us no signs and no campaign literature except these tiny little palm cards." So it wasn't you. By the time I'd gotten to you, I was already just pissed off at everything.
You know what? I didn't actually think about bringing anything to the Sheep Shearing Festival. I think it's because I understand why people are going to that event. It's so far from the election. People want to go and enjoy themselves. I don't think that they want to be accosted by politicians. And there's a lot of different races happening in the Merrimack Valley right now. I think that if every single person, every single candidate who ended up going to sheep shearing had brought materials, had brought signs, it really would have given a different tone to that event. So I think I understand.
It would have been, from my perspective, more democracy in action.
You know what? The more information you're able to get out to voters, I absolutely agree that's important.
Yeah. And I love sheep shearing. I'm not attacking the people who run it. I just think they're very wrong for doing that.
They do allow it during the 4th of July. I know that we've done that in the past. I think that the Republican Town Committee in North Andover has done it in the past. I know the Tea Party, actually the Merrimack Valley Tea Party, has had a similar booth at the 4th of July celebration. So they do allow it during that. I don't know if there's a particular reason why sheep shearing alone is what they excluded at, but...
All right, so let's just walk through. You're a young guy. You've been involved in politics for a long time. You deny ever working on Paula Porton's campaign. We all know that that's not true. And you were an aide for Barbara L'Italian, who was to the left of Tennis Lily. But that doesn't reflect on your views. You just worked for her, right?
You know what? Barbara really gave me a great opportunity. I was 16 years old. and at the time she was running for her first re-election, and so I got to help out in her campaign, and it kind of just went from there. She really, I guess for me, it tapped an interest that I didn't know I had at the time. It was something that I was kind of testing out. I was dipping my toes in the water of, what exactly is a campaign, and it kind of just, it took on a life of its own from there, actually. So I really was happy to help her. I think that
was the year she won. That was her first campaign that she won, right?
she got elected in 2002. I wasn't involved back then. I didn't
Okay,
have
so that was her re-election.
This was her first re-election. I remember I had just gotten my license. I was just allowed to drive people in the car, and I was driving her door to door, and we kind of hit it off. And it was really, I thought, interesting. I think a lot of younger people really get pulled into higher level races, whether it's president, whether it's U.S. Senate, whether it's governor. And I just found it really interesting and fulfilling to sit down with the actual candidate, or in this case, the incumbent elected official, and talk about issues. I thought that it was really something that I wish more younger people thought of. I think younger people, like I said, tend to jump on to the higher profile campaigns, but you very rarely get to actually interact with that candidate that you're busting your hump for. So it was a very cool experience. And so I was happy to help her, and then from there, I ran her 2006 and then 2008 re-election campaigns, and then she actually invited me to come work on her staff at the State House in 2009 when she became vice chair of the House Committee on Ways and Means. So it really has been a very neat experience, both politically but then also policy-wise, because I was able to help out a tremendous amount of people in the communities of Methuen, Haverhill, and North Andover, because those three communities which are in this district were also in that district. In fact,
how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
How old am I?
Yeah.
We're 27 next
Okay.
Tuesday, Tom.
Okay.
Next Tuesday, June 3rd. So,
But what are
Happy
you
birthday.
today?
excuse me?
What are you today?
26.
Okay.
That's why we have Paul here.
Okay. So yeah, so it was a very neat experience, and it's something that really tapped an interest that I didn't at the time know that I had. So,
So now take me through. We know that you supported Dave in the last election, right? And Dave lost, and Diana beat him. So we knew Dave was going to try and put a candidate up, and we know that the left wing of the Democrat Party is not happy with the current state representative because she's not a left winger. She's sometimes liberal on some things and conservative on other things. And so we know, like, the Mark DeSalvos of the world are very unhappy if you're not checking all the boxes that are liberal all the way down. But how did they end up with you, I guess, is the question. Like, why did you decide to jump into this? Because from my conversations with you, you keep telling me you're not a left-wing liberal.
I think it depends on the issues. I don't think that it was so much for me. It wasn't an ideological position. You're right. I wasn't a supporter of Diana DeCologero's when she ran in 2012. But I thought she deserved a chance. I really do think that she worked very hard and she got elected in the primary, and she got hard on a message of she worked hard delivering a message of transparency and wanting to promote transparency when she got elected, if she got elected, and when she got elected. And I think she deserved that chance.
Even Willie Lynn Heat would deserve that chance when he got elected.
I think everybody deserves
I
that
agree.
chance. If someone's going to get elected, I'm glad actually. I come from Mayor Zani's office in Methuen. I think a lot of people. I'm impressed. I'm surprised and impressed at how many people, after he won by 34 votes, gave him that chance and saw that he ended up being, I think, a really effective and has continued to be a very effective and good mayor for the city of Methuen. In the case of Rep. DeCologeiro, she got elected. Her platform very much was centered on transparency. And then, I don't know if this would have impacted me as much, but the fact that from her very first vote, she voted against the very types of issues she promised that she would champion, and that was issues like getting committee votes posted online. Right now, if you want to know how any of the representatives in the Merrimack Valley or beyond, how they vote in committee, you can't actually get that information by going on the state legislature's webpage. I feel like that's a really basic piece of government. It's a representative democracy. that's something that people like to trump. They like to talk about how they've been on committees. And if you don't know how they're voting in committees, or you have to bend over backwards to get that information, well, that's not really much to be impressed about. And she very much, meaning the representative, really pushed that issue. Not that specific issue, but the general tone of transparency, accountability, accessibility. And so I was disappointed when that was proposed. She and other Democrats, I was disappointed that many Democrats did this. They actually voted against it. It's not inaction that I'm upset about. It's the very action of going against what was promised. And so I think that really betrayed our trust. And it wasn't just that vote, but it was the vote to also prevent bills from being online at least 24 hours before they're voted on. We could have a debate right now on whether or not we think 24 hours is long enough, but they should at least be up. I can remember when I worked in the legislature, we had a lot of people who would call our office, some from the district, many times people from outside the district, about issues, because we were in Ways and Means, budgetary issues tended to be the predominant issue, where people would call and want to weigh in. And I think that if you don't know what's happening in the legislature before it happens, well, how can you as a representative or a state senator, but in this case representative, how can you effectively represent the people.
Well, it's kind of like Nancy Pelosi saying you have to pass the bill before we can know what's in it. I mean, that's part of the whole Democrat credo. Sounds like you should be running as a Republican from what I've heard so far.
No, so this is the thing, Tom.
Are you a Tea Party guy? Because it sounds a lot like you are. At least so far, anyway.
That has nothing to do with Tea Party. I'm happy to say that I have many strong, active Democratic friends, and I don't think any of us can defend those type of positions at the state level, and that's why it really upset me, because it seems like common sense. I would argue it is common sense. I mean, here we have 21st century technology available to get this information out to people, and we should be doing that. I really do think that we should be doing that.
I agree with that, by the way.
Well, and I can't defend it either, Tom. I mean, I'm a big, as I said, I'm a big Democrat. Or people, especially, for instance, like yourself, you think of me as a big Democrat. If you challenge me on this issue, Phil, defend the legislature, defend Democrats for taking this position, I can't. So that's something that.
Well,
really
not yet, because you're not in office yet. And once you're in, though, the fear is among those of us who are a little bit more conservative, is that we've seen Phil DeCollegeros come and go for years, who have great ideas and have common sense. But the minute they get in, they're part of a team, and then they start checking all the boxes.
Well, that's my disappointment, because with Representative DeCologero, that's something that she had pushed. And she actually said at a debate at Man's Orchard that one of the first bills she would be filed would be one to challenge the House, literally, this was the verbatim, challenge House rules. And this was an opportunity right there to challenge House rules, and she went along with everybody else. And I was very disappointed about that. So I guess you could say, Phil, this is a fear that we have. I'm sitting here telling you, I've never led you to believe that I'm not an honest guy. You can trust me, and I will live up to what I'm saying.
We've talked a lot over the years, and you've never misled me as far as I know.
And you know what? And I try to be upfront. And we do disagree on quite a bit of things.
On a lot of
things, and I'm upfront about that, because it doesn't do me any favors to tell you one thing, and then eventually I'm going to have to go on record. So it makes sense to just be honest from the get-go.
You're smart enough to know that I'm still going to be here tomorrow. A lot of these guys come in.
But you're right. No, well, not even if you're not, Tom, I should be honest, because if you're going to run for office and you're going to run on a platform, you should follow through on that platform, however narrow it may be. And this was one area where she made it, the representative made it a pillar for a campaign, and it disappointed me. And it just was a pattern that continued. I mean, even on this very show, you had a really lively debate between the representative and Representative Lyons about who was the real conservative when it came to the gas tax vote.
Right.
And I mean, I would agree with Rep. Lyons that was a flip-flop on Representative DeCollegero's part, where she said that she was not in favor of the gas tax.
But you would have voted the way she voted. You would have voted for the gas tax, right? Or no?
No, I wouldn't have voted for the gas tax, not at all. Especially if, as I said, she had taken a tone where she had said that it was not good for the Merrimack Valley, and then flip-flopped on that. And I think she was called out by several media sources. I think that was actually a really lively and interesting debate, actually.
Yeah, I think I called her out on that myself.
No, it was actually, I thought it was a really interesting debate. Very rarely do you have three incumbent elected officials, because I think on that show you had Rep. Lyons, Senator Ives, and Rep. DeCologero all discussing this issue. And I thought it was actually, it's a reminder of how good this forum is. Excuse me?
Ives called in, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I remember.
But I think that was really good for voters to hear that, no matter what side you fell on, but it doesn't change the fact that in that instance...
So you're saying, A, you listen to my show, and B, you like my show.
Tom... And Tom goes, I do listen to my show.
It.
Yes, no, I do like your show. I think it's interesting. I think you have good people on here. I think that goes back to what I first said, that I'm thrilled to be here, because you have people that listen to your show. My father-in-law, if I'm not listening to your show, my father-in-law will call me after the show and say, did you hear this, this, and this?
That's awesome.
And I said, no, I didn't hear it today, but...
but you get him to summarize it for you.
If I don't get to hear it directly,
that's
yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
So I know Paul's chomping at the bit, but there's no way you can ask him about abortion before the break, because we only had 3 minutes.
No. I'm chomping at the bit? No, not
necessarily. It seemed like you were chomping at the bit to get
listening. I was sort of just being patient, sitting here, waiting for the important stuff to come out, and it hasn't yet.
I see.
So, well, Tom had asked me why I was running, and for me that was,
right.
It was a matter of trust. I feel like our trust was betrayed. And I think that, as you said, Tom, I've never led you to not believe that I wouldn't be an honest representative, and I'd like to go up there. I do think that we need to pursue more transparent and accountable policies.
What do you stand for differently than Representative DeCologero?
In 2 minutes.
I think that the first is that I'm going to go up there and be the leader that you can trust. I'm going to go up there and absolutely prioritize the pursuing of those transparent and accessible policies. I'm
talking about issues.
That's an issue.
The very issues of
Paul
transparency.
means abortion. Whenever he says issues, he means abortion.
I don't know where Representative DeCologero stands on that. I think that she is more to the left. I actually think that I'm very much in favor of a woman's right to choose. I absolutely think that women should have that right. I think that it's...
Should we have to fund it? I hate to do this right up to the break, but should the state taxpayers have to fund it?
Fund abortion?
Yeah.
I think that health insurance should cover it. Absolutely. And not just carte blanche. But I do think that there are important issues around that topic right now. I think that the Supreme Court is looking at whether or not the buffer zone should be upheld. I think that's a scary thing. I think that's something that our state has right now that is pretty effective, that 35-foot buffer zone. And again, I don't know where the representative stands on this issue.
What about preborn women? Should they have any choices?
I
With
think
30 seconds
No,
left. Good
this
job,
is-
Paul.
I think that
His
women
answer was
should
no, though.
absolutely.
Did you hear him say no?
I think women should absolutely have. I think women right now should absolutely have
Females.
the right to should have complete control over their own bodies. In that
But if
regard.
they're
So-
dead, they have no control.
So this is very. I think that you and I are going to definitely disagree on this.
Yeah.
Paul. And actually, as Tom gave me the heads up to.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not a matter of agreement or disagreement. I'm just wondering if you believe that females have a right to choose if they're not yet born.
His answer was no.
Okay.
I think that the.
But I have
the
a follow-up
has
question I
control
want you to
over the
think about as we're going to break.
I'm Gretchen Putnam, managing editor of the Eagle Tribune, and you shouldn't be listening to Paying Attention.
If you wanna be somebody,
There's Martine and the girls.
if you wanna go,
Boy, I had a lot to eat this
God, that just feels like that was the longest break ever. Especially with Paul just getting all personal with Phil DeCologero.
I know.
That had to be the most uncomfortable break ever.
Tom, let me get something straight here.
Yeah.
You're the one that instigated everything, on the air and off.
Right.
You
Well, I think
continue
the
to
snowballs.
dig at me.
Right.
Shame
yes.
on you, Paul, for letting him manipulate you. Then.
Yes, he continues to dig at me to get me to talk about
Yes.
these controversial things.
Yes.
And then he excoriates me for
For doing it, right. And that's what makes great radio. Now you have found the formula, my friend.
I have.
Except we weren't on the air, so.
Yeah, that was the only bad part. Had we been on the boy, folks, what you would have learned in the last 20 minutes, the last 10 minutes.
It felt like 20 minutes.
So it did feel like 20 minutes. So Phil actually has to leave. I thought we had him for another half hour, but
No,
he has to leave.
I have
So-
my 3-year-old daughter's first dance recital today at noon at the Collins Center in Andover, so I'm sorry about that, but I'll
That's
be back on
okay.
the show whenever you want me, Tom.
But here's what I want you to do. I want you to commit now to doing a debate on my show against Diana and Oscar.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I told you that I would too, but I had to ask, 4 or 5 other people, right?
I know, you had to
their
ask
advice.
Barbara Italian.
Yeah, I need to ask everybody.
Actually, the only person you really have to ask is his wife. Because it doesn't matter what anybody else says. If the wife says you're not doing it, I'm pretty sure you're not doing it.
No, I'd absolutely do it. As long as it works for the schedule, which it
Right.
will work for the schedule.
So we got a commitment on that. We have a commitment that if you win the primary, you're going to come in and you're going to debate with Rosemary Smedili.
Absolutely.
Okay. And very quickly, I had asked you prior to the break, we were talking about abortion, even though we know that's not going to get settled in the next 2 years by one state rep. But it is an important question, and I'm glad that Paul brings it up.
Tom,
I
you
agree.
talk about settling, and I don't want to interrupt you, but I feel like that's the best way if we want to see a reduction of that procedure in our society. The best thing that we can do is to educate more people, educate more of our young adults about best practices. And it sounds like Paul would disagree with me on that. That abstinence may be best. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but for those folks who choose not to subscribe to that philosophy, I would like to think that we as a society encourage them to do as much as possible to prevent unwanted pregnancies before they happen.
Condoms in the schools, 6th grade, 7th grade.
Oh yeah, no, I think that we need to be aggressive when it comes to sex education. I think we need to be honest with kids, not just about sex education, but when it comes to the abuse of illegal substances. I think that whether it's something as minor as, I shouldn't even say minor, any drug, any illegal drug, I think that we need to teach kids how to be responsible adults when it comes to the consumption of alcohol, when it comes to if they ever encounter marijuana, when it comes to prescription pills. I
And
mean,
so-
that was something that I think that there was a joke made before about how I was relatively recently a teenager. There were no efforts made to educate any of the students about prescription drug abuse. I think that's actually really scary because when you look at where our society is now, when you look at the epidemic of addiction, I think a lot of those addicts fell into it unknowingly because they were using what they thought were
Safe
pills.
drugs.
Well, I mean, the doctor's prescribing it, so they
Right.
think it's okay. They actually did a really great form recently. It was at the beginning of April. The North Andover Health Department, the Police Department, the Youth Center, all got together, and there were about 150 parents who ended up going to the North Andover High School auditorium to listen to a recovered addict, listen to a parent who battled, the parent of a child who battled addiction, and they talked about all the different ways that it can be detected, it can be prevented. I think we have to make people comfortable, parents comfortable with talking about it. And I think now that, especially that as a parent, I read the newspaper and you hear about some things that people are abusing, and it's like, well, parenting doesn't come with a manual, and I didn't know about this until I read the newspaper. So if we can try to create more ways for parents to learn more about what substances are out there. I think back to at one point kids were using bath salts. This was after I graduated college. It was really very recently. I mean, if my child, my middle schooler, ever walked into the house with something called bath salts, I probably wouldn't give it a second thought. I would make an assumption based on what it's called. How else, as a parent, are you supposed to know that you should be watching out for these substances? So there was a father at this event in North Andover who asked a really great question along the lines of what I just said, which is, what should we be looking for? What are resources for parents who want to find out more about potential substances that could be abused? And how can we educate parents more about talking to their children? So I think that's a really big step that the state should be taking, specifically, the Department of Public Health, to try and engage parents. I think we have an existing infrastructure. I think our school systems offer a great opportunity. I'd like to see what happened in North Andover happen across the entire state, because I think once we get parents comfortable with knowing about these substances and comfortable with the facts behind them and comfortable with talking to their children, I think we can see a lot more progress made in this area. Because it's really, that's a scary epidemic actually that's happening right now. As somebody who our personal, it has been personally impacted by it, I think that it's a scary thing we as a society confront. So I think we do need more education on this. So I'm sorry,
I know you want to go, but can you give your a phone number where people can get in contact with you if they want to work on your campaign? If you have a website, social media stuff, how do people get in touch with you? How do they give you money? How do they get on board with your campaign?
So if you would like to follow me on Facebook, I am on there, Phil DeCologero, DeCologero. So thank you, Tom, for pronouncing it correctly this entire time, because not everyone can.
Right.
I just recently
I was
learned
saying
myself.
it wrong for the first 3 years I knew you, and
Yeah.
I heard you say it one day when you got up at town meeting, and I went, damn, how come he never corrected me?
I just let you go with it. Well, I don't listen to your radio station, that's why.
All right, yeah, you and Steve Zanny.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because the Tribune's really great.
Yeah,
that's
they're
what you want me to
the
say.
best.
Do you want me to come and make? No, listen, I'm not taking it.
See, I actually like you as opposed to Steve Zanny, so if you did that, I would actually be hurt.
Listen,
If you
I
did
thought
what-
that
if you
was.
did- if
I
you did
thought
what
that was
he
a
did, I would have
funny-
been hurt.
I thought that was a funny joke for any listeners that are listening to it. The mayor, after his election, ended up coming. He didn't come on the TV show. No, did he come?
He called in.
He called in. And I can't even remember the specifics of the joke, but started just talking about how great your competitor was.
Yeah. And then said when
and
he knocks on doors, nobody ever listens to my show, no one's ever heard of the Valley Patriot.
Hey,
But I actually like you, so if you said something like that, I would be upset.
well,
I'm
we were
giving
just
you a friend request right now.
friend request me.
Alright.
So that's my personal page, but absolutely follow me on my fan page. My website is www.philforrep.com.
You should have done philofthefuture.com.
Yeah, well, in the future. I mean, that's kind of unnecessary because I am the future right
Phil is the future.
And if you'd like to email me, it's philforrep@gmail.com. And if you'd like to give me a call, I have no problem putting my number
Is it
out there.
Phil for the number 4 or Phil FOR?
No, FOR.
Okay. I just want to make sure because it's radio and sometimes
No, it's
people
absolutely,
in their
and
head.
Phil is not spelled FIL, it is spelled PHIL. And if you'd like to give me an email, again, it's philforrep@gmail.com, and if you'd like to give me a call, it's 508-423-6709.
How much money have you raised? I heard that you had a fundraiser at one of my friends' houses last week and you raised a ton of cash.
Matt McLennan was very generous and opened up his home. We had a really great turnout. I actually just had one the same night that you were at Joe Fish. In fact, I was at the Sons of Italy in Methuen. I've been very humbled by the amount of support I've gotten. I think a lot of people are just really energized. I think a lot of people, again, are disappointed with what they feel is a betraying of trust. And I'm happy to go up there and actually push what I think was a solid platform 2 years ago from the representative, which was one of accountability and transparency. So it's been really great. I mean, I know that you know, and I kind of made an assumption that your listeners would know that I most recently wrapped up working for Mayor Zani in Methuen. So I think that one of the strongest things that I bring to this district is I'm going to be able to hit the ground running for all 4 communities here. Whether you're from North Andover, you're from Methuen, Lawrence.
Well, you're going to
Hayward.
have the support of Dan Rivera and Lawrence because he's with Dave Teresi and they're buddies, so there's no question they're not going to support you. You've got the endorsement of Steve Zani, even though he only won by a few votes when he ran. He still went to bat for you, and he still came out and endorsed you.
Mayor Zani is really, I think it's a testament to how well he's done in Methuen that, you're right, he won by 34 votes in 2011, and then 2013, because unlike Lawrence, we have 2-year mayoral terms in Methuen, the mayor was up against a challenger who outspent him, and despite being outspent, the mayor actually won by, I think, 18 points. So, not a few votes, not even a few points, he actually did really well, and I think it was because the city of Methuen has been really happy with his leadership. I think that he's been very much somebody.
And then when we go to North Andover, you've got the support of all the North Andover Democrat Town Committee members who have kind of pushed you up and helped you out. Our good buddy Mark DeSalvo, who's a frequent caller on this program.
Well, he listens to your show.
does.
I'm happy to call Mark a mentor and a friend, and
Mark
I actually.
Salvo, the town moderator.
Yes. Well, you know what? Get the town moderator who ran a phenomenal town meeting this past.
Yeah, I wasn't hearing that, by the way, but we'll have to discuss that another time.
About his town. I think he did. I think as far as
I
managing
was
town
hearing
meeting
he
goes.
was not doing very well toward the end. I haven't seen it yet, but I have a videotape on my desk.
Tom, you are a resident of North Andover, a registered voter, and you were not at town meeting.
I missed town meeting.
Okay.
It's a pox on my house. I went to Taste of Methuen. Figured I could go there for 15 minutes, take pictures,
Tom, with all
and
due
make
respect,
town meeting.
I went to Taste of Methuen and I went to town meeting.
But you
so-
did it the right way. You went to town meeting first and then Taste of Methuen.
No. Honestly, because I thought town meeting would go longer than it did. I went to Taste of Methuen first because Taste of Methuen started at 6 and town meeting was scheduled to start at 7. It didn't begin until a little
See,
bit
I got
after.
to Taste of Methuen and I ran into like a couple of people, and then that was it. 2 hours later, I was walking into town meeting and they were gathering it out.
See, I thought they did a really good job at the Taste of Methuen.
But I still have a videotape to watch. I heard, and again, I haven't seen it yet, but I heard that Mark kind of lost it toward the end. He was cutting people off that wanted to speak.
Absolutely, I don't think so at all.
Alright.
I think that he did the right thing, which was a topic kind of got. I think that a lot of people had said, we spent a dramatically longer time
You
discussing.
guys spent an hour on cupcakes.
I don't think we spent an hour, but we did spend much more time on cupcakes than we did on our budget, and that was not. That has nothing to do with the town moderator, town manager, nothing like that.
You've
So-
got a recital to go.
I do, and look at that. I don't know, the guy in your studio, he has no idea how to spell Italian last names.
No,
That is
he's
if only Al knew how poorly they just spelled his last name. But thank you so much for letting me be here today, Tom.
Listen,
And
Phil, thank you for coming in. I'm looking forward to savaging you in the future. I always want to let people get their feet wet when they come in and kind of feel comfortable, so I can lure them back into the web and then savage them later on.
And I suspect that'll be the case,
It will
right?
probably
That's
will be.
okay. And it was good meeting everybody. And thank you to the listeners.
Thank
and
you
again,
very much.
philforrep@gmail.com. Thank
All
you.
right, thanks. The podcast will be up sometime today, and you can share it out. And hey, nice to meet you.
Now the important stuff, the
Now
the dance recital.
We'll do that. Yeah.
Be well.
Family's more
No.
important. So
Thank you.
on the line we've got
Here.
Boy, thank you. On the line we've